It is 5:44 right now. Coming up next on Sunrise.
As the legislature tries to solve a budget crisis, the touchy issue of gambling is up for discussion at the State House again. And one expert is in town to convince the state it's a bad idea. We'll hit the couch with Dr. John Kindt next. Welcome back. We all know Hawaii's in a budget crisis, and the governor recently said everything is on the table, and that includes gambling. Good idea or not, the legislature is trying to decide that right now. And today, they're going to have some expert advice. Dr. John Kindt from the University of Illinois is here this morning. Later on today, you're going to be talking to legislators at the Capitol, telling them what?
Actually, all week, we're going to be telling them that we're going to raise the red flag on gambling with crime. And we're going to say that gambling is going to raise your crime rate 10% per year after you bring it in. We're going to say that it creates new addicted gamblers, like drug addiction, new bankruptcies up 18 to 42%, new crime up 10%. And that's a Harvard MIT recent report that took about 10 years to do. So this is the definitive academics on it. If you do a valid cost-benefit analysis, you're going to come out with overwhelming costs. And that's why in my home state, Illinois, we voted to recriminalize the casinos some years ago. Now, our governor, who's now well known, killed that bill after the vote was passed. But they actually passed a bill to recriminalize the casinos. Why? Because all these social negatives.
So it's fairly well known that these social negatives come with the deal. But then again, legislators are so tempted to start some gambling to get the revenue.
You're doing it just the wrong way. In Illinois, for example, one of the first states to get the casinos, we've lost over $20 billion that's gone into the gambling and just left the state. If we had not had any gambling, the sales tax revenues and the other revenues off of that consumer spending that was now going into gambling would have solved all of our budget problems. We're now virtually bankrupt in Illinois, and a large part of that is because of the gambling. And that's one reason why they voted to recriminalize the gambling in 2005, is because after they heard the testimony on this from the experts, and we had a National Gambling Commission, and it said there should be a prohibition on the expansion of any type of gambling anywhere in the United States. So why am I here?
Well, real quick, what about this for the people who are in support of it? Shipboard gambling. It's offshore. It's not, going to be crowding up Waikiki. Theoretically, it's easily reversed. If they don't like it, they just stop it, send the ships home, and of course, you get the jobs and the tourism.
Well, actually, if you take that money that goes into the gambling and you use it to pump prime the economy, which is what you have basically going on right now, and that's not to say that times aren't tough. They're tough everywhere, but it's like fueling the recession when you bring in gambling. It may look like a short-term gain, but it's a long-term pain. Learn from my home state. And by the way, it was our congressional legislators that went out and said we need this national commission, and it convinced our state legislature and other state legislatures who are throwing out the gambling. You shouldn't even be considering this because other states are throwing it out, and it's not going to create net new jobs.
Well, most of the public in Hawaii is against gambling, so they're counting on you to give a good presentation today. Best of luck.
It'll cannibalize your tourism, and it'll hurt. So
thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. John Kindt from the University of Illinois. Now over to you, Jeff.
Could gambling help the state out of these financially strapped times? Well, 8 bills at the state legislature revolve around gaming, and that's why the Hawaii Coalition Against Legalized Gambling has brought in a leading expert to address lawmakers, and we welcome in Professor John Kindt from the University of Illinois. Good morning to you, sir.
Good. Glad to be here. Good to see you again.
I was going to say, we've bumped into each other a few times.
At the Capitol.
Your thoughts about, so many people say that this could help spur the economy and that lottery or other things could help bring in money and could help stimulate.
No,
not the case.
It's just the opposite. Actually, gambling takes money out of the economy. Every slot machine takes in $100,000 per year. That's $300,000 with the multiplier effect in lost consumer spending. And therefore, that translates into one lost job per year per slot machine. So I'm here talking about a new recent report out of Harvard and MIT, which talks about once you bring in these slot machines in particular, your crime rate goes up 10%. So I'm wearing red today, red tie, red report, to talk about the red flag warning on gambling with crime. Crime goes up, and at the Capitol the other day, we had Peter Carlisle and the criminal justice authorities, and they were talking about how this is going to increase crime. They've done their homework. They know that gambling doesn't work economically, and it raises the crime rate. 10%, and you also see bankruptcies going up 18 to 42%. It's lose-lose for the economy. It's really going to hurt tourism and consumer businesses.
Only Hawaii and Utah are without some sort of gaming. The other 48 states have something. So are they all wrong and we're right then? And
well,
I mean, it seems like the other 48 haven't fallen apart yet, and we haven't seen any repeals of
actually, there have been. Governor David Beasley in South Carolina a few years ago just threw out all the slot machines. They'd sort of snuck in under a loophole. Watch out for the loopholes. Watch out for the lottery, because when you get the lottery, that actually provides a loophole for the slot machines to start coming in. And he literally threw them out, and their economy took off. And in Illinois in 2005, one of the first states to get the riverboats, one of the first states to get the lottery, we actually passed a bill out of the House to recriminalize the casinos. Why? Because they don't work. And we're really talking mostly about slot machines here. They're 90% of the money going into the casinos. So there was a federal commission called the U.S. National Gambling Impact Study Commission. It called for a prohibition on the expansion of any type of gambling anywhere in the United States, called for the recriminalization of slot machines convenient to the public, called for the recriminalization of sports gambling in Nevada. It's illegal everywhere else, and other types of recriminalizations of gambling. It said this is lose-lose for us. And actually, gambling activities take money out of the economy, and it's actually like throwing gasoline on the recessionary flames. So, you know, gambling is just the opposite of what we need right now in this economy.
Okay, a lot of folks say, okay, casino, understand about slot machines, but a lottery. You know, you hear a lot of people say that in this state it helps fund education, and they take a certain percentage, the lottery.
That's a common myth. We did studies years ago. There's a definitive study in the mid-1990s, 1996, by Money Magazine that looked at every state which had brought in the lottery, and actually it showed that the funding to education in real dollars was actually less in the lottery states and the more gambling states. And there was better funding for education in those states which didn't have the lottery. And this is so basic, it's in the World Book Encyclopedia. You go into any grade school, pull the 1994 supplement of the World Book Encyclopedia off the shelf, and any grade school kid will look it up and say, hey, the lotteries have not helped education. But you're right, it's a terrible misperception on the part of educators that when they think the lottery is going to help education. That has not happened. All the academic studies show that. All the government studies show that. The public has really been misled, and I hate to use the word conned, but they've really been conned on the lotteries because it has not helped education or other good causes.
Now, the other day I talked to you on Monday, and then I talked to Representative Joe Souki, who's been about establishing a gaming commission. He said basically he thinks that the 7, 8, 9 bills that were this session were probably not going to work. So probably relief, but I would imagine that you would like to see that continue in the future.
Well, I really don't take a position on these things. I'm here to inform the public. I don't take any honorarium or consultant fees. A lot of my colleagues don't either. We're senior professors. Our goal is to inform and educate the public and legislators and decision makers. Congress is really getting the message on some of these issues. But there is a lot of industry PR money out there, which very frankly I think is misleading the public. So it's a good public service for my colleagues and myself to come out here and simply put the academic facts, talk about the U.S. National Gambling Impact Study Commission, which has called for this moratorium on the expansion of any type of gambling anywhere in the United States, and the recriminalization of these slot machines convenient to the public. They're trying to tell us something, and we really need to listen to what the National Commission and the academic reports are saying about this.
Well, Professor John Kindt from
Thank you.
Illinois University, we appreciate it, sir, and happy travels back. You'll get back in time for Valentine's.
Invite me out anytime. I love it. I love Hawaii.
You don't mind.
Spent my honeymoon here.
We'll keep you in mind then. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hawaii's Morning News will continue. We'll have much more coming up. Thanks for starting your Thursday with us.
Tonight on Insights on PBS Hawaii, will tough economic times call for legalized gambling in Hawaii? Or will a redirection of Oahu's rail tax provide another source of revenue for our state? Also, Howard Dykes looks at recent developments in our economic crisis. Now, live in our studio, our host, Dan Boylan.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. Unemployment is at an all-time high, and we hear daily reports about diminishing state revenues. In the face of this tough economic news, elected officials have come up with some new and some recycled solutions to feed our revenue-hungry state. One new idea is to redirect the tax devoted to the construction of Oahu's rail transit system into the state treasury. And for some, it's time again to roll the dice and see if legalized gambling for Hawaii is a revenue winner. We've lined up an expert panel on each option, but we'd like your contribution as well. So please call and email your questions and ideas for our guests. Our phone number is 973-1000 on Oahu or 800-238-4847 on the neighbor islands. Our email address is insights@pbshawaii.org. Before we go to our panel, however, Howard Dicus offers background for Hawaii's debate over legalized gambling.
Not every state has a constitutional requirement to balance its budget as Hawaii does, but even the ones that don't are in financial trouble right now. The recession increases the need for expensive social services while cutting the tax revenues that pay for them. States as diverse as Texas, Massachusetts, South Dakota, and Florida are considering expanding their legalized gambling in search of easy money. Like gamblers themselves, these states hope to avoid belt-tightening by hitting the jackpot. And the debate is unfolding similarly in these states. Take Pennsylvania, where Governor Randall wants to expand gambling to taverns across the Commonwealth. This week, a newspaper editorial said the state has yet to demonstrate it can properly regulate the handful of licensed slots parlors it has, including 2 run by companies headed by ex-convicts. Maryland, legalizing slots at racetracks, has begun cracking down on the illegal slots in other locales. The newsletter Casino Sphere says states that legalize gambling come to see pre-existing gray economy gambling as competition. There is an economic issue to consider, and it is this. Legalized gambling is surprisingly cyclical, and revenue falls sharply in recession. It may be easy come, but it can also be easy go. Later in this program, developments in the economic crisis. But first, Dan and his guests will explore this gambling issue in deeper detail.
Well, we're not the only ones thinking about it, obviously. Now we turn to our panel live in our studio to address your questions and concerns about legalized gambling. John Warren Kindt is a professor of business administration at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. For 20 years, Professor Kindt has performed research focusing on the economic and societal impacts of legalized gambling. Maui Representative Joe Souki has introduced a bill to amend our state constitution to permit gambling in Hawaii. Representative Souki has been a member of the House since 1982 and served a decade as its Speaker. They now call him Speaker Emeritus Joe Souki. Not a decade, 6 years, you corrected me. I think that's pretty fancy, Joe, Emeritus Speaker. But we've run this flag up the pole before, Joe, the idea of legalized gambling in Hawaii, and very frankly, the people in polls have showed they didn't want it. The legislature, and we've had some bad times in the mid-1990s after 9/11, and yet they've said no. Why are you doing it again? This doesn't really have any chance of passing, does it?
Well, I'm kind of stubborn in this here. And it goes back because I come from a plantation community, and I know what it is to live in hard times. And I've been through about 3 cycles like we have now, bad economic cycles in my years, and in my 26 years as a legislator. And I've been a fan and a backer of bringing legalized gambling. Not that I like to gamble myself. I don't. But because we're a tourist-driven economy, solely relying on tourism, and now, of course, and with military and with practically no ag, we need to diversify our tourism. I mean, they come here for the weather, they come for the climate, they come for the aloha, but after that, there's not much to keep them here, especially to bring them back. And I was listening to a news report on tourism from Japan. There was this Japanese marketing person, and he was mentioned, yes, we're 20%